I feel people don't really understand. There's so much confusion.
Yeah,
That's why
so
I hear
much
like
confusion.
people say it's that, people say it's that. So I don't know really what it is. So I'm
Mate,
I'm confused.
It is literally, so the way Kivan like explained it was like, say like what we were doing last night.
Yeah.
So say he puts you in like a reverse Dalahiva, and then you've got to basically, the game would be, you've got to find your own way to try and take someone's back.
Yeah.
And that's it, with resistance.
Yeah.
And then he lets people drill that and find their own way to take the back. And that's all it is, in a nutshell.
But I think they use the constraints to guide the technique.
Yeah.
So, for example, I think I was talking about like a mount example. So you might want to, I don't know, you might start somebody in a mount position, and the bottom player might go, right, you're gonna start with the hands on the hips.
Yeah.
And the top player can't take the hands off the hips. You need to try and control the person.
Yeah.
And very quickly you'll realise how much of a fucking problem the hands on the hips are.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the second game might be, right, remove the hands off the hips.
Yeah, working on specific things.
Yeah. And then get the, get your knees under the elbow.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they're kind of constructing the controls of the position by these little kind of games.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what they don't want to do is say what you need to do to control somebody's mount is get the hands off the hips, get the knees under the elbows, control the head.
Yeah.
They don't want to give them that information. They want to help them self-organise to achieve it themselves by putting the constraints in place. So that's how they do it, it seems.
They try and get you the outcome.
But I have one question. What is the difference between that and specific training?
This is what we said. This is our argument.
Well, Kivan did touch on this, and he basically said that positional sparring is much bigger. Yeah. So within positional sparring, you've obviously got multiple things that you need to achieve. So we talked about sweeping from close guard.
Yeah.
So it might be like, you go, right, we're going to try and sweep from close guard. So that's a positional spar. But he was saying that even just obviously getting the underhook or the overhook, that in itself is a skill that you need to acquire to be able to achieve a sweep. So they would go even deeper. So rather than just have, guard, going from bottom to top, they would go, right, the first part of this is just controlling that hand.
Yeah.
So it's just achieving that. So it's almost like a more like a focused version of positional sparring.
Yeah.
That's how he explained it.
Like zooms in more in some sense on certain things.
Yeah. So
because that's always has been tricky for me to understand, like what's the difference of specific and ecological. Because to me it seems pretty much the same, but I guess like it's more narrowed down.
Yeah.
In some sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they'll look at, I don't know, just the things that as experienced grapplers we take for granted.
Yeah.
Like, underhooks, overhooks, wrist control, head control.
Yeah.
They see those things as specific skills.
Yeah.
So within a situation, they would focus just on that one skill, and then they would layer it up to create a situational spar.
So everything they do is basically narrowed down. It would never be... So they use that training method, and it's always narrowed down to specific things. They would never open up and be like...
No, they do. They do. Okay. So they did say the more advanced guys, that would look more like a positional spar, because they already have all those skills. Yeah. So all the skills that they have in place, they can already put all that together. Yeah. So if you're a beginner, they'll really narrow it down, and they probably won't do so much open sparring, or even like positional sparring. But as you get more advanced and you understand all those skills and you have those skills, then it becomes more of a positional spar.
But they and also, as far as I understood, it's never like very like specific movement drills like without resistance. Say for example, it's like one small move. They don't believe in that drill.
No.
Why not in some sense?
Because they want you to find it yourself. That's the only bit that I really struggle with.
Yeah. So what they're saying, so they're basing their methodology off of research, scientific research, and in the research it says that because sport is so variable, it's obviously moving all the time. Yeah. You can give somebody a dead drill with no resistance, but in live training, that environment, that situation is never going to be the same.
100%.
So their argument is it teaches you nothing.
But it's. I remember reading a book called Make It Stick many years ago. It explains the same. It's not about like in Jiu-Jitsu, you have to really know when to use the different things as well. You cannot learn that while just drilling statically. But I feel from my experience, and I've seen with others, sometimes there is this need to just do statically. Maybe you're in a position and you know the move, but you just need to get the muscle memory. You know what I mean? And it's like a clear pattern that's there, especially in a locked position. So I wonder why that would be neglected. Because you don't have to do it a lot, but sometimes it's just needed. You know what I mean? Like it could be like a throw that you just need to work on, like the entry, just to get it in, and then you can open up and have it a bit more free and unmechanical in some sense. Yeah. So I wonder why neglect like this tool that's used in all these different combat sports and seem to be very well working, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious why, because I understand 100% the reasoning, right?
And I think that's kind of that is the main kind of debate. I think
that's what everyone says, isn't it? It's that bit there. It's like, I completely agree. Even what you showed last night, like there was, I can't explain it. Like when you had the De La Riva and then you grabbed the lapel, and you shot through to weave the foot through onto the upper far hip. Yeah. So I tried that a couple of times on Paul and I couldn't quite get it. Yeah. And then you've shown like a little detail and I was like, oh, I think I can do that now. Yeah. So like my argument is if I wasn't shown that detail, how many times would I have tried it on Paul before I'd actually got it? It might have took me 6 months of me randomly trying to do it until one time I hit it and think, oh, that's the right movement. But
100%.
Me drilling it with you for like, 10 minutes last night, I feel like I could do it now. 100%. So that's the, they use like Michael Jordan and people like that, like shooting practice or David Beckham taking free kicks, that's like obviously there's variables to that, but like realistically he's taking a free kick or a penalty or whatever over and over again to get it in. Yeah. So it's the same sort of thing with drilling. It's like you talked about it last night. It's like your muscle memory. Yeah. Like how you can develop that muscle memory. Yeah. And then the other thing is everything that feels correct in jiu-jitsu is usually wrong. Yeah. Does that make sense? Like when you first start, if you grab a certain way, usually it's the wrong way. Do you get what I mean? Like
so twist.
To find that out, you would find it out, but it's a lot easier for me someone to say show me how to do it.
I feel like you have to build on top of the existing knowledge and use that. Yeah. And then if you want to innovate or you want to create something new, you have to then be like, okay, I'm not going to listen anymore because there isn't information on this. I need to really develop and try experiment. But when you have existing knowledge, and especially when it's positioned where it's like less variables, like mount or close guard, there isn't so many options, then it is almost a bit more mechanical in some sense. So you can actually use the knowledge and practice that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think like the ecological approach with someone like you or like higher level guys, it probably is the way to go because you know all the moves. So you would just be doing specific scenarios with resistance and that's going to get you better way quicker than you're not probably going to get much now out of drilling those moves you showed me last night because you know them like off by heart.
The way we train, for example, in Haugesund, me and Tommy and the guys, we didn't do like static drilling much at all. We did it when needed, when it was like, okay, now we need to do it. But mostly it was like sweep and pass back and forth with the resistance. And that resistance would increase. So we started slow and just increased it. And then we could use existing moves or that open up to play with other things, like different ways just to get like pattern recognition. You get reps over and over and you get to both practice former moves, things you already know and have in your system, and you get to almost like practice your intuition and find like new patterns, be creative and all those things. I truly feel that helps to like map jitsu because it's super complex. So you have to like almost get like a quick way to get good pattern recognition so you have good solutions, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And there's definitely research out there that talks about movement patterns. Yeah. So I'm just working my way through the books at the moment, the ecological books, Rob Gray's books, just to understand the science. And I'm going to go back to movement patterns and movement recognition and kind of see what the comparison is. Yeah. So I agree with you. I think I always think about like a wrestling shot. Yeah. When I coach it now, but I remember when I started just doing like double legs, like just the foot positioning. Yeah. You see it all the time. People just crash down on the
knee over toe, isn't it? It's just like such a weird feeling.
Yeah. So you see all the time people drop down on the back knee or they just can't get their head around it. Yeah. And I understand that practicing the movement or the footwork of a shot is like such a tiny piece of actually getting an effective takedown because it's the setups of hand fighting, the timing, all everything else. Yeah. And that's where the live training comes in. But without that footwork, like you wouldn't even be able to get started in that, Yeah. So I think there's definitely a place for both.
For sure. And some people, they're gonna have good instincts, so they don't even need it as much. Other people, they don't have the instinct, so you need to be like, man, you need to place your foot there, and then you need to be almost a bit more mechanical about it.
Some people in jiu-jitsu are not sporty or never done sport before.
They need the guidance,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
100%.
And I think with the ecological approach, I really like it, but I think once they really produce like world-class people, I think that's when people have to start taking notice. But until someone like, I don't know, like Gordon Ryan isn't, he drills all the time. Yeah. And look how good he is, and all those guys, they've drilled for years. Yourself, like you said, you drill and then you do the other like more open sparring. Yeah. Until Greg or someone comes out and goes, I've started from zero to like world champion. Yeah. in the ecological approach. I don't think there's like a huge argument for it to be like the way forward in jiu-jitsu. I think it's got its place, but I don't think it would be like, you know, even me like 2.5 years in, I think like if I switched to ecological now, I'd be okay. But I think if I done that from the start, I think I'd be further behind than I am now. That's my honest opinion. I think I would be, because I think I've learned a lot from like seminars and coaches and Paul and like loads of people. And if you used to take that away and just give me specific training, like find it yourself from this and this and this, I just, certain aspects I don't think I would have found at all, especially with like leg locks and stuff. Like I drill leg locks a lot, but and the entries, but I've watched those entries, or I'm asking people what the entries are or whatever. How would you find that yourself? That's my argument with it.
100%.
Yeah, but I think we'll see, man. I think he's producing some good guys. Is Greg? I think he's got. There's the Go, I think, who's a black belt world champion.
But didn't she start somewhere else? No, she's right through.
Yeah, he had it since she was 12, like complete novice. So he's got one. Yeah. And then I think he had, I think the guy's called Sid Vicious randomly. Some purple belt, just won worlds. Okay. And then he's got a blue belt who I think caught an ankle lock on the guy at blue belt worlds. Yeah. I think he finished the guy, got the tap, then got DQ because of the technicality of the position. Yeah. That guy that he tapped then went on to win it. Yeah. So technically beat the guy who then won the world.
Yeah, has some good guys.
So he's got some good guys, but it's such a small pool of people at the moment, it's hard to really know. And I guess another argument, which I thought about the other day, is obviously thinking about Danaher's guys and those guys that drill a lot. I do wonder if there's like a lining of the stars where you've got Danaher with his techniques and you've got a group of athletes that those techniques work really, really well for. Yeah. And I think the argument from Eco is that actually if you had somebody who mechanically, you know, their body mechanics didn't suit those moves, would they be as good? Who knows?
You need the right person. Yeah. And also it's tricky with training methods because some people can obviously become world champion with that method. Yeah. But you don't know if they would be even better with a different method.
Exactly, yeah.
So you need almost like test groups, and it's not only because you have a world champion that proves the method, even if it's drilling, non-drilling, whatever method, because they might be world champion with any method. That's why it's so hard to truly know if it works with anything, right?
Yeah, I always think even with like Rokas and Danaher now, he just attracts all the top guys. So all the top athletes are going there now. Yeah. So like, and as well, you talk about, you know, stars aligning and stuff. Like Gordon Ryan, obviously, was very good before he was training with Danaher, right? Yeah. So would Gordon Ryan still be Gordon Ryan without Danaher? Probably would. Yeah. You know, probably would.
100%.
And not taking away what he's done and what Danaher's done for Gordon, and probably like in the technical aspect of stuff. But I truly believe that Gordon's Gordon because he's who he is. You know, and most people, it's like, you know, it's like most people in most top sports, they find a way to become the best in those top sports.
You see that all the time. You see it like, even if they don't necessarily have the best circumstances, they still find a way. You see this over and over. You see like Mikey training with hobbyist. Makes no sense, you know, on paper, like what? But he makes that work, and he's like world champion multiple times, you know? So you see people that really has it, they always find a way independent of like what kind of training method or environment, I would say.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, it's just such an interesting debate. But I think the reason that Greg and maybe some of the eco guys get frustrated is because the lack of understanding of actually what they do. Yeah. You know, I think that's the big thing. Like what we talked about last night, it's like a question of like, oh, it's just rolling. Like they think it's like an open mat every day. And then Greg just sits there and just watches them do an open mat and just being like, you're shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, but it's not like that. It's completely opposite.
And I think even their coaching, they just add additional constraints. So I think rather than, because they're obviously, and we all know this sat here, right, that a technique that works for me won't work for you and for you and vice versa. Because of flexibility, because of limb length, all these different things. And that's why they don't want to teach techniques, because they're like, right, it might work for this group of people, but actually 75% of the people it might not work for. And we've all learned techniques, or we've all taught techniques, and you've seen people then do it in situational sparring and just can't do it. They just can't do it. And that's another argument. They're saying that people struggle with drilling and technique as well. So this is a new way, but it's that self-organization where under the right constraints, you can maybe figure out what works for you.
100%.
And the way that they coach, I believe, if they're, I mean, the good guys, I mean, I'm sure there's shit eco coaches as there is shit non-eco coaches, but the way they coach is that they'll see somebody struggling with a position, and rather than go, right, stop, here's a technique, this is what you should do, this is what I do, they'll go, right, actually add this constraint in. So maybe that's, I don't know, start with your arm in an under position and now go and see how that works.
Trying to lead and then can figure out in some sense,
Yeah, so from a coaching perspective, it seems like a very like deep, high level way of coaching.
Yeah.
But I think equally that's part of the barrier of it as well. It's going to be very hard for a lot of people to have the time and the right mindset and mentality to maybe coach in that way. It's a very different way.
Yeah, and from my perspective, it's almost like it's a tool. You know, like drilling is a tool, sparring is a tool. I would say floor rolling is a great tool. Eco is a tool. Specific is a tool. Active drilling is a tool. Everything is a tool. And I just don't believe there is this holy grail of a method where you can glorify one method above everything else and say, this is the holy grail. I think it's like you have to use all of them. And then some people need more of that. And you have to find your own almost like unique way of learning.
Yeah.
But you almost have to use all of them. You can't neglect certain things because you might miss out because you're so locked into this idea of how it should be. And then you neglect a great training method that's there for you. So I think you should be open-minded, look at all of them and take the best from each of. And that's the best way to learn, in my opinion.
Yeah, it feels that way, I think, and I don't disagree. I did get to, I'm just reading the How to Be an Ecological Coach, which is, I think, one of the later books from Rob Gray.
Yeah.
And I just literally got to a bit in that where he said that you need, and that this is probably where some of the mentality comes from. He says you need to choose a camp.
Yeah.
He says you can't be one or the other. You need to decide where you sit. And the reason for that is he said that if you're trying to teach somebody self-organization and to be a problem solver themselves, but they know that they can just find the answer, whenever they start like really struggling with a problem, rather than keep persevering to figure it out, and self-organize is the term they use, they'll then just go, oh, actually, I'll just get the answer, and they'll start shortcutting, and they kind of rob themselves of that learning journey to solve the problem. And I think that's why Rob Gray was saying that you need to choose.
But I feel with today's internet, you have all the information. So there's no way you can make people, you're locked in, can take internet away from you, you can't find information. There's going to be ways to find information, and I don't think that's going to hinder your ability to be self-organizing and wanting to problem solve. You can use both. You can take existing knowledge and you can problem solve, and both are great tools, and you can one doesn't neglect the others. You know what I mean? So if you use both, I think that can actually it can help your learning to get faster in some sense, because you can take the information and then on top problem solve on that, and that goes even better. You know what I mean? To experiment with and everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think you're right with that.
I think with the eco approach as well, though, Jiu-Jitsu is so complex. They're trying to like.
I think that's the difference between a lot of the research.
It's so unmechanical sport. It's crazy.
You think of like just regular sports, you know, football, tennis. I don't know anything. There's variables. Of course, there's lots of variables and lots of things. But if you're playing a certain position in football, or if you're playing tennis, it's like it's only a certain amount of variables. Whereas Jiu-Jitsu, because of the complexity of the moves and complexity of it. It's a million variables, so it then makes ecological approach so much harder to like input into the sport. You know, it's really hard. It's really hard to get that. You know, it's really hard to implement that when you're trying to like narrow it down to certain specific areas and then move on to the next. It's just impossible.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because I think a lot of the research isn't around, well, none of the research is around jiu-jitsu. So none of the literature, scientific literature is around jiu-jitsu. It's all around sports that are far less, far smaller in regard to the variables and the options. And I think, like you say, there's so many like different things to learn in jiu-jitsu without shortcutting a few bits and getting some fresh ideas. Like, you're going to really limit yourself, aren't you?
It's a complex endeavor.
You're not going to live long enough to get through even like a fraction of it. You know, so
it's complex.
So yeah, it's an interesting one, but I think no doubt the debate will continue. And you know, we'll see in time, I guess, which prevails.
But I think it's good. It brings like the fact that we have these discussions, right? It's important. People to have new eyes on it, discuss the methods, because for sure it's easy to have like a culture where it's almost like just follow the culture and you don't deviate from that. And we have to have like new ways of looking at training methods and experiment. And it's good because then we can take the best from each of them. And in the end, maybe combine everything and find like a perfect training method. You know what I mean? So I think it's super important and healthy for the community.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is a shame when people get a bit combative about stuff. Because, like you say, all discussion is good, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
People just get narrow-minded, don't they? And you know, it's like my way or the fucking highway, innit? It's like, well, I'm the best, so you're going to listen to this. It's like, all right, some ways can be better in certain aspects.
Yeah, but anyway, there we go. What are we? 20 minutes in, and we've just talked about eco. Another fucking podcast.
Not even fucking started it.
But yeah, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. I obviously missed your seminar yesterday, so apologies again for that.
Hours.
But I think you covered some of your matrix back taking, is that right?
We were working on the Lahiva, kind of like having control and then attacks, and then working on something I really believe in, like attacking both sides.
Okay.
So going to the left, but also going to the right and kind of using the momentums to get attacks going. And then worked on like something called like the inside matrix. It's a move that's been around, but it's like super cool. You can take the back from the Lahiva. Worked on ankle locks, worked on different attacks from the Lahiva basically.
Yeah, nice. How did you find it?
Yeah, it was good. There was a few things that I tried and do and I couldn't quite do. But then when it's shown me, like the big one for me, I think I'll take away is bracing on my own knee.
Yeah.
You know, with that straight leg.
Yeah, that's a frame.
For me. Yeah. Like I'm not the most flexible, but when you pull it up and then brace on your knee, you can pretty much invert. So I was like, I was buzzing with that. Yeah, it's really good. It's not an easy way, but it's a really clear way to get to the back.
Yeah.
Really clear from a position where I don't think people expect it either.
Yeah, it's kind of unexpected.
You must really piss people off.
Like,
1 minute they think, I'm just stood here, and he's got De La Riva, and next minute he's choking me.
Yeah, nice. We'll have to look at it a little bit later. Really yeah, sounds wicked. So tell us about, we obviously talked about sort of people starting jiu-jitsu and different ways of learning. You obviously grew up in Norway.
Yeah.
I think in quite a small town, right?
Yes, Egersund.
Yeah.
It was like 10,000 people, so it's pretty tiny.
Oh, that is tiny, isn't it?
Yeah. And what was growing up like? Was there much of a jiu-jitsu scene?
No, jiu-jitsu came kind of later. I think I almost started jiu-jitsu like a year after it opened. So I think maybe jiu-jitsu came in like 2009. So before that, there wasn't any jiu-jitsu. So I was doing football like most kids, doing a lot of skiing and those kind of more like traditional sports.
Yeah.
But then in 2009, jiu-jitsu came about and I saw it in newspaper, but I was so caught up in football. But then eventually, I think like a year later, I wanted to experiment and try it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what was the appeal to jiu-jitsu? Had you seen like UFC or anything at this point?
I remember I've seen UFC, I've seen MMA, and also I've been fighting with my brother my whole life, so I was used to grappling. So I was like used to that stuff. So I think just the whole appeal of like the using technique, getting this position, I really thought like submission looked very cool. So I remember when I went for my first session, I saw like omoplata. I was like, holy shit, that's badass. I want to learn more. So it kind of just made me hooked instantly.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And I think you started, and then I think 4 years like later, you were doing it full time, right?
So I started in 2010, and then in 2014 I was done with high school. So I was like, okay, I was supposed to do like higher education, but I had done pretty good at Blue Belt. So I was like, I just want to go full time. I just want to see how far I can take this 1 year. And then Tommy Langaka was on the same page. So we just traveled to America 3 months, went to AUJ. Then I went back home. Then I went to Arizona 2 months, and actually ended up taking silver at Worlds.
Amazing.
And that made me realize, like, okay, 1 year of doing this full time, I take silver at Worlds. I should just commit, like, do another year. So I kind of just 1 year, and kept going into it.
Yeah, sick. So on the topic of training methods, you obviously got quite good quite quickly to achieve that. I mean, what was the training like when you started, and what approach did you find worked best for you when you were sort of that sort of white blue belt?
So when I started with Damon. He was a blue belt, and he only had like 2 sessions a week that he taught. And I was like, I want to train more. So I just bought mats in my house. My best friend and nearest neighbor, he trained as well. So he would come over to my house, and we would just train a lot at home as well. So we would study online, drill a ton. I was so obsessed of getting better, so I would make like training plans, like this week we're going to work on that, and trying to like almost like build my game. So I just did that, studied, drilled a ton, sparred, did all the stuff, and then eventually I just felt my game start improving a lot, and I had more and more success in competition. So I just feel like all that like focus helps so much.
Yeah, it's interesting because I hear lots of different ways of people sort of documenting their success or their training, with jiu-jitsu. I mean, I've tried just writing down sessions before. I've even put together like a little spider chart, with jiu-jitsu, and then little things that come off. I didn't continue it, but I started, and I've heard other people that would just kind of write down the common positions and sort of break down different moves from that. So you found sort of documenting kind of work quite well for you?
I felt in the beginning, because it's in the beginning you kind of don't know. It's so much you're going to learn. So I try to understand like what's the basic position. Like you have close guard, you have half guard, reverse delay. I try to understand what builds on top of each other, so I can build like a good foundation. So I definitely felt that helped in the beginning, but then eventually I kind of dropped that and I start more almost like having a bit more open mindset to it and more follow my enthusiasm in terms of where I was training and what moves I was doing. But I definitely felt in the beginning I created like a good foundation and understanding for my jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, nice. And back in the early days, what was your kind of A game? What sort of type of jiu-jitsu did you naturally gravitate towards?
So actually in the very beginning I was all about deep half guard. I saw Jeff Glover, I saw those guys. I was like, I want to do deep half guard. So I was doing that a ton. But then quickly I saw like when I was coming up, like when I was a white belt, the Mayao or like purple belts, they were like already famous. So I remember like I saw them. I also saw like the Mendes brothers, and I saw like how efficient the berimbolo was. And I also quickly realized how good the double sleeve shallow lasso kind of system was. So I was like, okay, I'm going to double down on that, try to learn like the best game I possibly can. So it was actually at like end of white belt even, super early. And I started doing a ton of berimbolo, and quite quickly that enabled me to start taking the back on most people, because most people had no clue about berimbolo. So quickly I would just go to competitions and just bolo, like everyone basically. I remember going to Euros in like 2014 as a blue belt. Had 7 matches and 6 of them were berimbolos. So I was just spamming the berimbolo, like doing it a ton, and it gave me a lot of success. So definitely I specialized a lot. I obviously had a lot of holes in my game, but within that domain of like double sleeve and berimbolo, I felt super competent.
Yeah, we had a guy years ago that was similar, and he was really flexible. Yeah, and developed a really good berimbolo game. And I think he was a blue or a purple belt at the time, and he was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, it's like a cheat code.
Yeah,
it's super. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was good, but yeah, really good. And then tell us about the that experience. Obviously, training in Norway with I guess quite a small group of guys, and then you went out to the States. Yeah, and obviously got into some of the big gyms. Tell us about that experience. Did that open your eyes much?
So I trained with a super small crew. As I said, Dom was a blue belt. Most of the guys were white belt. I had not too many reference points. I hadn't rolled with a lot of black belts. I did one trip to Brazil though, the summer before I went to AUJ, so I kind of had an idea of like how the black belt level was and stuff. But still, I didn't really know how AUJ and stuff was going to be. But actually, even though they were super good and the level was high, it also made me realize like the level back home was also very good. Because I thought in my mind, it's like you have our level and their level is just way beyond, and we're like nothing near, and we can't almost like reach it. But when I traveled, and the same thing for Tommy, he made the same realization, like, oh, we actually have good level. Like, we don't necessarily need to travel all the time, because the guys back home are super tough. I don't know what it is, but like just the training culture and the people back home are tough. So we got like super good training, and that was such a good like epiphany to make. Because instead of feeling that I had to leave Norway or can never do it in Norway, it made me be like, we can actually do it in Norway, or we have good training, right? So that was super, super nice to realize.
Yeah, and we obviously talked about the kind of benefits of like YouTube and that type of thing. Yeah. I remember like when I first started, I've been in and out the game for years, but we used to have these bad boys, these books.
Yeah, the books.
Was like YouTube much of a thing at this point for you? Yeah. So did you lean on that quite a bit?
A lot. Yeah. I've seen a lot of YouTube matches. It's a lot. I love to just, obviously I watch instruction, but also watch just a ton of matches. Because I felt like I could pick things up consciously, but I bet like subconsciously my movement patterns start to emulate them. So I just saw so many matches that I almost had instinctively ideas of like how to react in certain positions just because of the amount of footage I've seen. So I would study all of them, like the Mayao, the Mendes, Landrolo, Lepre, like all of the best, and see what they did and against the best guys and what truly worked. And I tried to both, like, as I said, like emulate them, but my body started also moving a bit similar to them in some sense.
Yeah, that's cool. And how about your training, like volume and frequency? Because this is something we talk about quite a bit, where finding the right balance, you know, to maybe enhance jiu-jitsu, but also to avoid injury and that type of thing as well. You know, so, you know, you should be maybe doing jiu-jitsu, but also some gym work, some maybe some flexibility, depending on where your kind of natural attributes already lie. Yeah. What was that split like for you?
I think my whole career has been mainly jitsu. Okay. I've been just, when I have the decision, it's like, okay, jitsu. And I just doubled down on that. Like I've done a lot of stretching because I was a natural flexible. Yeah. So I wanted to get flexibility. So I did that a ton. I done some strength, some pull-ups and stuff, but mainly Jiu-Jitsu, because I felt like that's the hardest thing to develop is the skills. Yeah. You know, I can always get stronger, but to get like truly get technical and truly get the skills, that's going to take time. So I just doubled down, and that's where also I had the most like passion about. So I just did a ton of Jiu-Jitsu in the beginning, and I would even go like, I did the sessions, and then I would either stay an hour longer or go an hour before just to do more, like just a bunch of Jiu-Jitsu, work on it.
Yeah, and how did your body hold up? Have you had many injuries?
Very little, to be honest. Yeah, I'm knock on wood. I feel very, very lucky in that sense. But I think I've always been pretty like wise in my training too. I haven't gone like mayhem, and like I'm kind of I know my limitations, so I try to be cautious. And to be honest, actually stretching has helped me a ton, because I remember having more injuries when I wasn't flexible, because I would put my legs in certain positions and I didn't have the flexibility to take it, and boom, I would feel it in my knees or stuff. But after I got flexible, it's almost like my whole body can just absorb it in some sense. So I feel like it's rare that I get these big injuries.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting balance really, because I think I agree that flexibility is going to be like massively helpful for avoiding injuries, because if, as you say, if you're in a position and you're at your end range, and there's like a load of tension through your muscle, and then someone slams some weight through it, or you need to try and explode out of that, then your muscles might tear.
100%.
Equally, if you're strong and you're used to that type of, you know, energy through the muscle, then they might be resilient to it. But it's kind of like, you know, what's more important. But I guess, as you say, it's going to be what works for you and your body type.
100%.
Yeah, it's all body type, isn't it?
Yeah,
100%.
But you can, even if you're big and strong, you can get way more flexible if you just take your time and stretch.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Mate, you're doing the 30-day challenge of Yoga BJJ.
Yeah, we spoke to Sebastian recently.
Okay, nice.
He spoke highly of you, actually. He said he learned some really good detail from your guard.
Nice.
He talked about the fact that you gave him an example once where if you can get your foot to your face, like that's great, but it's still a weak position where you want to kind of turn the foot out to a stronger position. So he gave you a lot of credit for changing his perspective around his game.
That's cool, Terry.
Yeah. But he was talking about a 30-day challenge that he's doing.
Okay, nice.
Which sounds really cool, where he's not a 30-day, it was 12-week challenge, where he's got a number of different movements that are applicable to jiu-jitsu, and he's created this almost like gamified it a little bit, where he's got baseline testing where he'll teach you like some movements that will expose your limitations in flexibility, and then give you some stretches, like 15 minutes a day and then 30 minutes once a week.
Nice.
And then retest at 12 weeks to see if you've improved in these different areas.
That's awesome.
So when we spoke to him, I was like, I probably need this in my life.
You definitely need this in your life.
Yeah. But you know, I'm flexible through some ranges, but not others. So, you know, I've got a game that works for my body, but maybe some more flexibility might be useful.
It's going to help, I feel it helps for everyone, to be honest, especially the hip. Yeah. If you have more flexible hip, it's going to affect your guard game, your passing, everything. Because Jiu-Jitsu is so much about like the hip movement. When you throw in, even if you just do a omoplata or triangle, if you have flexible hips or more flexible hips, it's going to help, right? So just like something I kind of like recommend to anyone, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned that you were quite smart with your training, because I think this is another thing that people need to consider with their training as well. It's intensity of the training. Yeah. So people can train twice a day, every day. Yeah. But if they're going like redlining every single session, that's probably going to get sort of injured or damaged or fatigued.
100%.
So what was that like for you? Like, did you undulate the intensity of your training? Were some days like harder sessions and then other days easier sessions, or was it all pretty just chilled and more technical?
For example, when I moved to Haugesund, because I moved there as a brown belt to train with Tommy and Vega, we kind of gather up. And then when we did sparring, it was so intense and so tough that we realized like there is no way we're going to be able to spar every day with each other. Like there is no way. So we start only sparring like 2 to 3 times a week. And then the other days we did kind of like the active drilling, like sweep and pass back and forth for like 1.5 hours. So we definitely had like higher intensity days and lower, because we couldn't keep up with that crazy training schedule. It was like hard every day. And then even in the weekends, we took the weekends off. As I said, like 2-3 times a week, super tough. And then the rest was kind of more like mellow in some sense. Yeah.
Tell us more about the active drilling, because again, going back to the eco conversation, we won't dwell on it because we spoke about it enough, but obviously there was the drilling, not drilling thing. And I think their idea of drilling is like dead drilling. Yeah. But you mentioned obviously there's like active drilling that you do. So tell us how that looks and what sort of positions you might work from and how that typically works in a session.
So what we did mostly was like one guy start playing guard, and he either get a submission, a back take, or a sweep, and then eventually when he done that, he does something from top, so a guard pass, and you do that back and forth. And we quickly realized like we don't want to do like running warm-ups. We feel it's a waste of time. So we use that even as a warm-up. So we might start with like 5-10% resistance and just start moving and doing like a sweep or something or a back take, and then you do a pass and then back and forth. And then eventually, as the kind of like class goes, you keep increasing the resistance. So in the end, it's almost like sparring. It's like full intensity. But what's so cool about it is like the game is almost set in the sense that you know the winner. So you almost eliminate the ego out of the equation. So I feel it's way that kind of like enables you to be way more creative, dare to take chances, and it's less like injury prone because you don't have the same like, it's not like sparring because you know the guy eventually gonna pass in some sense, even if you resist quite a lot. So I definitely like that training method a lot, and also it allowed the kind of like the other, like the partner, to experiment with defenses, so he could give different reactions. And because we didn't have so many like training partners, that allowed us to experiment with a lot of different reactions. Because the partner, we tried to be like left leg lead, right leg lead, high base, low base. So we had to almost like be used to all different reactions. So I felt that training method helped us like a ton. Because especially in IBJJF, gi, a lot of it is decided with like how you play guard or how you pass. So we just doubled down on that. So I feel our amount of like sweeps and passes compared to others. Because imagine we did this for like 1.5 hour, maybe 2 times a day, every day, you know what I mean? So the amount of like sweep and pass we have and like the pattern recognition is a lot. So I feel that helped us a ton.
Yeah. So the person that's sort of defending guard, so they would stay in a defensive cycle, just adding in more resistance until somebody passed, and then you'd switch.
Exactly. And then you can experiment with it too. We will sometimes add in like almost like sweep, pass, and then submission, or sweep, pass, submission, escape. So it doesn't have to only be sweep pass, but I feel like sweep and pass is the most important thing. So why not double down on that? Because you're not going to be able to submit if you're not able to really get to positions most of the times, right? So we just did that a ton, but then sometimes we would deviate and do like a submission and escape or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. So would you also do like if they passed, the person on bottom would like have to try and get up or get like escape, or would you let them?
Normally, eventually, you kind of recover, give them good resistance, so they have to chain, go side to side, and eventually they kind of get out. So you don't. It's like the winner is clear. The guy is going to pass.
It's going to pass
somehow, but then it depends on like the level of resistance and everything. But it's not like a full like situational sparring where both can win in some sense.
Yeah,
you have the winner set.
Yeah, that's clever. I like it. I feel like when we do our...
Mate, I was just thinking...
we kind of start like that accidentally because a couple of times a week we train in my garage. I've got like a gym space in my garage, and we've got 3x3 meters mats.
Cool.
So it's quite tight, and none of the walls are like padded. So you literally got like a weight bench there, like a ski erg there, a brick wall there. So we got to be really careful with each other. Yeah. And organically, we just end up, one person ends up sort of sitting down in guard, and some person starts passing. So we kind of always accidentally do that, where we kind of choose a position. And you can't really, it's quite hard to sweep and wrestle up because it's so tight. So yeah, it's cool. The thing that we don't do though is kind of decide on the winner, so we're still battling for a submission on the floor.
No, but it'd be cool though to do that, wouldn't it? Like even today, like, you know, I'll pass, you pass, I pass, you pass. Like,
it's a lot of fun. We get to experiment so much, you know.
Yeah, I agree that the ego, you know, even between good friends, like does hinder creativity a lot.
Definitely, yeah, for sure.
You don't want to get caught, or like, you know, I think that takes it out though, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's really kind of like if you do sparring normally, it's so easy to go like A game and go main attacks, right? But with this one, there is no ego because you know who's going to win. There's like, so just it allows you to be open and free and try whatever feels like instinctively correct to you. You can just be like, boom, this, or you have seen something online and you want to just try it, you know. So it really facilitates an environment where you can open up and try new things.
It'd improve your guard so much. Well, it'd improve both aspects, wouldn't it? So much if you just keep doing it. If we'd done that twice a week for 6 months, you're
going to have a lot of reps in this.
Yeah, no, I like it. And you also talked about being ambidextrous as well and attacking both sides.
Yeah.
And this is something that I really wish I'd done different because I'm very one-sided.
Yeah.
And I think it might have been something that I said to you in the early days as well about if I was starting again, I'd try and focus on both sides, but I'm not sure you necessarily did that because you always seem to pass the same side still. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to like I don't know. I'm fairly ambidextrous with stuff, but I find like, I don't know, like I'm still, I'm still a blue belt. So I find from like neutral position that I want to get really good at one side. And then I still do try at the other side, but I'm just nowhere near as good, if that makes sense. So it's like from a neutral position, I always try to pass on one side, but then I've got like a pass for the other side. For example, if I'm doing a knee cut or a smash pass on the other side, so I'll try and like smash pass you on the right side, and then if that doesn't work, then a knee cut on the left side and go back and forth.
That's nice.
You know, so I still like, I'll eventually get past doing that. You know, so it's like, I don't want to, I try setting up the other way sometimes, but it feels so alien. You know what I mean? And in that situation, you might tell me I'm completely wrong, but I don't know if I need to know the smash pass and knee cut on the opposite side if I'm from a neutral position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So is that what you mean? Are you able to, or did you try and achieve like the ability to, I don't know, like knee cut past like the same way on both sides, or do you have like a different tacks for different sides?
I definitely have practiced a lot because I love knee slide. I practice on both sides. However, I 100% agree with what you're saying. You don't need necessarily to do the exact same attacks. You just need options.
That's it.
You need to make sure, if say for example you're playing guard and someone is right leg leading, you need to have options. If someone is left leg leading, you need to have options. It doesn't have to be the same, but you need to be able to deal with both. The same thing when you're passing, and that enables you to start doing chain passing. So even if it's not the exact same, you still can go side to side, which is super important to have a good guard pass. Yeah. So for sure.
Yeah. And is that like the advice to beginners for you that you would sort of focus on? Obviously, would you focus more on just developing a really good guard on one side, or do you think
both sides?
Both sides.
I think it's nice to have the ability, like, especially think about it in terms of like right leg lead and left leg lead. Because I remember once I think it was a purple belt, and all of a sudden I did a NoGi match, and the guy stepped forward with a left leg lead, and I was like, fuck. Now my game is gone, you know. And that realization made me like, shit, I can never allow that to happen. I cannot go into a match and a person is doing like steps with the other leg forward, and I'm like, what am I doing now? You know what I mean? In Gi it was a bit easier because then you can make a grip and kind of force the other side. In NoGi is a bit more tricky. But it just made me realize like I have to have options on both. It's because you cannot dictate which foot they're gonna step forward with. So you need both sides.
And your training, you obviously are known for competing in the gi. You've obviously done some no-gi as well, but your training, was that primarily gi in the beginning, or did you do a bit of both, gi and no-gi?
When I started, I did mainly gi, and I did some no-gi like once a week maybe. But I competed in no-gi like when I was like white belt, blue belt, and did almost like equally good in both. But then when I moved to Haugesund, and also like a bit before, I did mainly gi. We barely did no-gi for most of the time. And then kind of like in the recent years, I've done some more no-gi.
Okay. And where do you feel your kind of strength is? Is it still like no-gi? Because you talked about some of the sort of lapel stuff that you've used previously. Obviously things like berimbolos are a little bit easier if you can get hold of cloth. Do you still feel like your strength is more in the gi, or are you trying to sort of...
I feel obviously because of the amount of training I've had, I'm better in the gi. But I actually feel my game translates very easily to no-gi. It's like the way I'm structuring myself, I'm playing reverse de la Hiva and de la Hiva is almost the same in gi and no-gi. And also I'm able to adapt my berimbolo and crab rod game quite easily. Because even if I don't have grips, I can kind of cup the hip and do a lot of my back takes. So like the main differences is like learning leg locks, which I've put time into. And I feel I have a pretty good grasp on it in training, but I need to make sure I can show that in competition. Because in my mind, it's almost like the same as berimbolo, where it's all about like understanding knee lines, and all the ideas are very similar. So it's not so like different. So I feel like I'm starting to get a pretty good grasp. And the other difference I feel like I have to understand more is like just attachment. It's like in gi, it's super easy. You just make a grip and now we're attached. But in no-gi, especially if it's sweaty and someone disconnects a lot, it's kind of tricky to make sure you can hold them. So it's like, how can I get a bite on you if you don't want to engage into my sequences? So it's like finding ways to be a bit more attached. So those are like the main differences. But I feel most of the other things, because I love like outside passing, knee slide, side to side, leg drag. It's all the same in my opinion. It's not like a big difference.
And just with like that sort of the lack of grips and thinking about that attachment. I think I heard you talking a little bit about climbing that you do as well. So you don't do so much like weight training other than the pull-ups and stuff. Do you find that sort of that sport helps a little bit with the kind of different grips in NoGi?
I definitely heard people say like they feel my grip is stronger, and I think like climbing, what it does is like it really enables you to get like isometric strong in holds. So like you make a hold and you have to lock. It's super hard because you have, especially if you have a steep wall, you have to lock one arm and then go for another grip. And that strength is, you see that everywhere in grappling, where like you have to lock in and just hold in any positions when you climb for the back or when you pass the guard. So I'm sure all the climbing I've done has helped me in Jiu-Jitsu. And not just isometric holds, but like the pull, my core strength, and even like almost like problem solving, but also like the grips. All those things have helped, because climbing in many ways are very similar to Jiu-Jitsu in what kind of muscles you use and stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
Reminds me of Ross Vanstone. He's a blue belt who trains at Checkmate, but his grip, he does rock climbing, and his grip, when I first like rode with him like last year, when he got his blue belt, we come back and had a little roll, and the first thing I realised, he gripped me in NoGi, and I was like, fuck me, that's some grip. You know what I mean? Like I've not felt that sort of like grip from someone. And then he was saying like he does a bit of rock climbing and stuff when I coached him, but I was like, fucking hell, man.
Climbers' grips are insane. When
it was crazy.
When I started climbing, I thought I had good grips. I was like, I have good grips. I've done Jiu-Jitsu for forever. I did a couple of one. I was like, holy, I have no grip. It's insane.
I go with my little boy to clip and climb, you know, like one of those like fun ones.
Hardcore climbing that, mate.
And hardcore, mate. And even that though, when you're doing like the different grips and the funny little like, you know, where you got a grip like this, or you got a grip a rope or whatever. Mate,
it's hard.
I'm like,
you're so pumped.
You know what I mean? You're so pumped.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
insane.
It is so cool.
Yeah, no, I think grip training is something that obviously massively helps. We've got Dan's book down there actually.
Nice.
Obviously Dan Strauss, he's known for his grip strength and the weird stuff he does, but it certainly seems to be an advantage if you've got a good grip.
Yeah,
it always makes me laugh with Dan, because I assumed because he's got such a good grip, he'd be like unbelievable in the gi. And then when you really think about it, it's such an advantage in no-gi in it.
Both,
do you know what I mean?
Both,
but you know what I mean? Like when he said he didn't put on a gi for 10 years, I was really surprised. I thought he'd do both. Like, you know what I mean? And then when he was like, nah, just do no-gi. And I was like, oh. And then, but really thinking about it, if you've got a ridiculous grip in no-gi.
You're so attached to it.
Right? Yeah. He grabs you, you're not getting out. Grabs a tricep, you're like, fuck.
It's impossible.
Well, it's when he does like the pull-ups with his hands just like this.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And on the ring, and his grips are insane.
Yeah. But yeah, it's all good. Tell us about your competitions then, mate. So you obviously mentioned that you did fairly well at blue belt.
Yeah.
You've obviously got some pretty good accolades, European champion and the World Pro champion, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So tell us about your competition like journey, like obviously from blue belt right through to black belt.
Yeah.
Was there, any kind of occasions where, you felt it kind of clicked for you, or, any tournaments that you kind of really look back on and sort of have fond memories of?
Yeah, I think the main one was like European as a brown belt. That's like the one that stands out, because I did good at blue, I did good at purple, but I lost like the semi at Europeans at purple. Then I lost the final at purple. I went to brown. I did like okay, but I never won anything big that I wanted to win. And then kind of like my second year at brown, I went to Europeans, and I felt like I had the skills, I had put in the work, I knew I could do it. I had my parents travel down, I had my fiance travel down, I had 2 friends that don't do jiu-jitsu travel down, so like everyone was there. It's like this kind of like a lot of pressure, right? But it just felt really great. I had visualized a lot that I was going to kind of pull it off. I was really into visualizing back then. So like foreseeing that I'm going to get the gold medal and all those things. And then the day started, and like first one was just quick submission, and then the second one quick submission, third one quick submission, semi-final quick submission, and then in the final I met the guy that beat me in all the majors at purple. I could never beat this guy, and both of us just meets everyone. We meet in the final, and I get a quick sub on him, and I was like, just a perfect day. Everyone was there. It was just like a amazing moment. That kind of gave me the belief, like, or rather, it showed me how like I really have the skills. And then I went to like Copper Podium, where it was a lot of good black belts, like a mixture of brown belts and black belts. And I ended up taking silver there. And then I went to PANS, won PANS with a lot of submissions. So everything just kind of propelled after that. And it gave me like a good like kickstart, because then eventually I got my black belt and went into black belt with a lot of confidence.
That's great. And I speak to like a lot of people, and I found this personally over the years where I don't really compete much anymore at all. But back when I did at the sort of lower belts, I couldn't always like take my gym performance into competition.
Yeah.
Like there was always like, I don't know what it was. I did a bit of MMA as well, and I don't know if I just felt like jiu-jitsu was just more of a therapy for me, and I just felt like competing was disturbing it a little bit, and I couldn't quite get into that kind of competition fight mindset.
Yeah.
Have you got any advice on if people are maybe struggling to take their performance from the gym into competition?
Yeah.
Like in regard to mindset and how you were successful?
That's been one of my actually personal struggles. I always feel I've underperformed in some sense. A lot of people have been like, just do what you do in training, you know, and I was like, I'm trying, but I just can't, you know. Sometimes it would happen, but a lot of times I would just feel I was underperforming and never really got like my skill access when it matters. So I went into this deep like psychology, tried to really understand my mind. I went super, super deep, spent a lot of time trying to understand. And I kind of made the realization is like, what's the difference of me in training and competition is that I don't care. I don't plan as much. I'm present to the moment. I'm having fun. I have less expectations. I don't trying to be so locked, you know what I mean? So I was just doing, instead of having all these like rituals and plans and like I'm going to pre-plan, I'm going to do this and that is just creating, it's like just creating more anxiety, all those habits, because I wouldn't do that in training. So I start just caring less, thinking less about it, planning less like game plans, all those things. And all of a sudden I start to trust myself more. And then I was able to really get access to my skills. And I felt like all of a sudden I was able to be creative, do things like just figure things out on the spot, be way more spontaneous, really do jiu-jitsu that I was proud of, while simultaneously having more fun. So objectively it was better, but subjectively it felt a lot better too, because it wasn't this like fear-driven stuff. It was just me having fun. So I definitely felt like instead of, I would say the main thing is cliche, but it's like be present to the moment, don't overthink it, and don't like overcomplicate it in some sense. And you're going to realize and see how it's like easier than you thought.
Yeah, that's good advice, because it's, again, one of these things where people talk a lot about competition tactics.
Yeah.
You know, and Sam, our coach, who you've probably met, Sam Crook, he talks a lot about having like a plan, having an A game that you need to go to.
Yeah.
And obviously he's good enough to deviate from that if shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
But would you still go in, even with that mindset, would you still go in thinking, right, I'm going to initiate a takedown, initiate a guard pull, I'm going to try and get to this position. If I get to this position, then I know from there.
Only thing I would say that I go in almost like pre-planned is like what I'm going to do in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I tend to like pull guard, and from there I open up, and it's like whatever happens, happens. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to do my A game, because I might like just gravitate towards my A game. When I go to training, I'm not just going to go for like my worst game, you know what I mean? I go to my style and I do my moves, but it happens naturally. I don't have to be like planned like at this second I'm going to grab there. And the thing is like what I feel when you're competing, it's just too many variables. My brain can't commute all the variabilities. It's just too much. So I can't foresee everything. And even if I did, like I would have to try to lock it down to have limited variables. So I would have to try to instantly make like a grip and just lock it down. And I don't want that style where it's super locked and narrowed. I want to keep it a bit more open. So now I feel like comfortable even like without grips. I could just play my open guard, do guard retention, and then grip is a bonus, and just find cool ways to attack.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like have maybe like a D maybe at the beginning, because that you can actually control, and then just open up and kind of trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And your prep for competition, do you train differently in the run up to a big competition compared to how you would outside of competition? I
definitely just try to because I train well almost like year round, but I start increasing my intensity. I'm a bit more sharp focused. I may not play around as much in training and experiment as much, because I want to make sure I'm like dialed in for like proper competition. But it's just mainly the intensity and those stuff. I don't change too much. And I always feel there is like almost a competition coming up, so I can't like change it too much up.
Yeah, fair. And with your training experimentation, I mean, a bad habit that I've gotten into previously, and other people have talked to us about as well, is, I don't know, if you feel you're maybe weaker in a certain position, like, I don't know, like sort of pin escapes, for example.
Yeah.
You might start allowing people to in training to put you into a bad position.
Yeah.
So you can kind of work out of it. But sometimes that can create obviously quite a lazy style of jiu-jitsu, because you just get used to letting people pass your guard, because then you're comfortable getting out of it.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts or advice on experimentation from maybe sort of weaker positions? Do you still Do you allow people to get that position, or do you do more situational sparring, or do you kind of try and lean the spar into that direction but still make it difficult for the person?
I definitely like when I'm rolling to kind of like give certain position. For example, like I'm giving my back and then work on my back escapes. But as you say, if you're always giving stuff, eventually it might create bad habits, you know what I mean? So if you feel you need extra work on a position, then it makes sense to be like, okay, let's just really concentrate and focus on this issue. Mm-hmm. Let's do a lot of like specifics, map it out more, and then you can go back to do in sparring to kind of then give it and see if you actually made improvement. Yeah. And then you might realize like, oh, okay, I made improvement. I can work on something else.
Yeah, no, perfect. And then actual competition day, like warm-ups, like visualization. I mean, what does your comp day typically look like?
I've tried to have no like clear ideas. Before I was way more into it. I had before like leading up a lot of visualizing. Remember having like the music list I had to have on, and I was like, remember being so stressed because I was like I had to listen to the music, but then all of a sudden I'm fighting soon, and I was like, yeah, but I need to listen to my song, you know. All these ideas, all the plans, all the rituals, just on paper it sound nice, but it just made me more stressed. Yeah. Now I'm just showing up like I'm going to an open mat. I don't know what I'm going to do in open mat. I don't know if I'm going to listen to the music before. You know what I mean? Like, I just show up, you know. I'm there. Sometimes I listen to music. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes, you know what I mean? I try. The only thing I can say that I'm like trying to do before a competition is to get a good warm-up. That's the only thing I would like to have a good warm-up. Yeah. Sometimes that might not even happen, and I'm fine. But I want to if I can, I want to make sure I'm having like a good sweat, so I have at least had some pulse before going out there. But I'm really trying my best to don't be like boxing myself into all ideas, because again, if it deviates, I've felt myself that I get stressed by it.
Yeah, no, I think trying to do all this stuff is definitely stressful, isn't it?
Yeah, all these rules, and it's like all the rules stresses you in sometimes,
yeah.
Right?
And especially, I don't know what the bigger comps are like, but comps can be so like sporadic and stressful in themselves, in the sense of like you think you're on at a certain time and that changes.
It's so chaotic, right?
Yeah, it can be an absolute nightmare.
It's like 1 hour before,
like doing like a grappling industries, and you got the gi at like 9 o'clock in the morning, NoGi at 4. It's like, so I'm scrap at that. Yeah, just doing one. Yeah. Just want to do NoGi, and then just it make the day better as well, wouldn't it? Yeah. You know what I mean? You could just turn up at whatever time, watch it, enjoy it, know you're on it. Roughly 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something. Yeah. Go on, fight, go.
Yeah.
Simple.
I think it's a bit better with smooth comp now, but they still get it wrong on occasion. And your actual sort of warm up then, so your pulse raise, like what does that typically look like? Have you got a routine, or do you just literally move around a little bit?
I just move around, and sometimes I spar pretty hard actually. I had many people be like, man, why do you spar so hard? But I just like to have a good round, good sweat, feel my moves, and almost like I just want to have almost like I'm breathing heavy, you know. I feel get the first steam out, because I feel sometimes if I don't, it's almost like when you do the first roll in training, that can almost be where you get like the most
tension.
Yeah, you can feel like more tense, and you can feel more like, I don't know the English word, but where you get pumped.
Lactic acid.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel if I have a good warm up, that's like less likely to happen. Yeah. But
you think it helps with nerves?
Maybe, you just start to move around, you get into rhythm.
You know, when you go to an open mat and you don't do it, like you don't know anyone, and you're like a little bit like, oh, fucking hell. And then you have a couple of rolls, and then you think like, it's fine, I can roll with everyone now. You know? Is it similar to that, do you think? Yeah, I definitely feel just moving around, doing jiu-jitsu, you start like getting less nerves and just enjoying, you know, having fun doing the warm-up. So I try, if I can, to find a partner and do an actual roll. I feel that's the best. And then you get to feel your grips and hold your grips and do those things.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. We obviously talked a lot about your wins. Yeah. Obviously, you mentioned that you had a couple of losses as well, as we all do. I mean, what do you, is there any losses that really stand out, that really annoyed you, or have you kind of learned any like really valuable lessons from any of your losses?
I'm not sure if I have anyone that like really stands out, but what's been the pattern I feel with me is if I lose, like for example, first year at black belt, I lost euros and I lost pants, and I remember just being like, I'm gonna show them, you know. I get pumped by it, you know. I don't feel a loss gonna take me down. I always get almost like motivated, just puts me more focused. So then after that I went to World Pro and I won World Pro, and then I went to Worlds and took bronze at Worlds. So just like the pattern with me is if I lose, I tend to just get better. I don't beat myself down, and I I try not to be like almost like a victim and be sad. I'm like, whatever, I just have to make sure I can improve. I have to try to look at what happened and see if I can make anything better. Or maybe I just realized like I didn't have my day. I don't need to overanalyze and try to beat myself up of how bad that performance was. It was just, that was not my day. And that's fair. Happens in training, happens in life. Move on. And so I just try whenever I lose to not go too deep into it. But the same thing actually when I win, I try not to get too hyped. You know what I mean? I don't want to get too low nor too high, but kind of stay more neutral and don't let it affect me too much.
Yeah, that's a great mindset, mate, because I find even with myself, you know, sometimes just thinking about competing and doing all the stuff you're going to do, you put that expectation on yourself, don't you?
Yeah,
you know, just 100%. Even locally, like I can't even imagine what you feel like at times, you know, and you got that expectation of yourself, and then putting that to one side, like you said, and just trying to be level with your emotions. Just it must take some time to get to that point, though.
Yeah, but it's like starting to care less about the results, because you put the results on a pedestal, and you might think that's going to give you some more status or more happiness. You have all these ideas and expectations of what it's going to do for you, and then eventually make the realization like it doesn't really matter. People gonna like the people that like you are gonna like you no matter what. So it's like, it sucks, obviously you want to win, but in the end you realize it's not that big, it's just more in your mind. And then you can kind of just be a bit more neutral and be like, okay, it's fine no matter what.
Yeah. I think for some people sometimes I think maybe if their prep hasn't been right. So I think, as you said, you train pretty much all the time. Yeah. You know, you're always kind of going knowing you've prepared well. I think sometimes if people haven't done that and they go in a bit unprepared, they'll beat themselves up because they know they could have done better in the prep maybe. And I think also as well, if people maybe, I don't know, if they're a hobbyist and jiu-jitsu is like their main thing, their main identity, and outside of that they haven't got much going on, then maybe they'll put a lot of pressure on themselves.
I think so. That you see that with a lot of people, if their whole identity is jiu-jitsu, they have nothing else, that's more pressure then. So I think actually can be helpful to have some like things outside too, because you realize like jiu-jitsu isn't everything, because when you're in this bubble it might feel like it's everything, but it's not. There are other things in life as well.
Yeah. 100%. And we touched on obviously NoGi and Gi, and we're seeing kind of within the jiu-jitsu like space that NoGi seems to be like gaining a lot of momentum, primarily because like the pro scene and
the money.
This is it.
It's all about the cash.
Yeah. So it feels like as an elite grappler, the sensible thing to do, the business thing to do would be to kind of lean more into NoGi these days.
I would say maybe I don't know, like in some sense, if you're gonna be the very best and you can get all the money prices, sure, but also it's almost like Gi is undervalued. If you look at in terms of investment, it's almost like it's undervalued because Europeans made records. They had 6,000 competitors.
Wow, that's crazy,
the Gi market is huge. So if everyone is doing NoGi and no one is doing Gi, there is still a market in the Gi for seminars, instructionals, this whole thing. So I sure, like in some sense, if you can be the very best and you can be the new Gordon Ryan and get all the money prices, sure. But I don't think necessarily that you can't be in Gi and make money. I think that might be like I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily accurate.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think maybe from competition.
For competition money, for sure, I agree 100%.
But it is a really good point that the Europeans was the biggest we've ever seen.
Yeah.
So there's obviously a huge market, as you say, for seminars if you enjoy teaching and doing seminars.
Yeah.
In training wise, would you just someone like me who trains? I train quite a lot, but I'm only going to compete pretty much NoGi.
Yeah.
But would you still train in the Gi? Because I'm training in the Gi at the moment, and I do enjoy it. I'm starting to enjoy it a lot more.
Yeah.
But like, I had an injury in my shoulder, so my grip in my left hand goes. So that's why I'm not going to compete, not because I don't like the Gi.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're me, would you still train the Gi? It wouldn't affect my like progression or anything like that.
No, I think you can. I think you can both. You can learn from both in some sense. Like Gi can help you NoGi, and NoGi can help you Gi in some sense. But obviously, if your only goal is to do NoGi and if you almost like prefer and training NoGi, I would say do more NoGi, right?
Yeah.
But if you actually really like Gi and you think it's a lot of fun to train, then I don't think it's going to hurt you.
Yeah, I'm only in the Gi like twice a week or something, and then maybe like 8 sessions or 9 sessions in NoGi. But I was for a little while I was like completely avoiding the Gi.
Yeah.
And then it was just was basically just not doing jiu-jitsu instead. And I was like, that's a bit actually fucking stupid. Like, actually just, do you know what I mean? Like, I was just not going to class because it was gi, and I was like, that's fucking stupid. It's still jiu-jitsu at the end of the day. I
remember talking with Pato, like, how much you train gi and nogi, and because he has such a good nogi game, and he developed that quickly. And he told me he trained mainly in the gi. He trained more in gi. I was like, what? That's insane. But it's so much the same, and you just need these small tweaks that can enable you to do some of, like, for example, like the heel hooks. But in general, he trained a lot of gi, and he's amazing in nogi. So I don't think his gi is hurting his nogi, right?
Yeah, well, I was thinking about even your seminar last night, and I was thinking how would I transfer some of that to the nogi stuff? You know, with like when you take the back, instead of grabbing the pant, would you grab the far hip? Just pull it in and stuff like that.
Just small tweaks.
I was just thinking about that in my head last night on the way home. I was like, how could I change that? You know, because but they're all transferable, really.
And then moving forward, do you think you're going to be competing more in the gi or no gi, or keep it a split?
I think because now I've only done like 2 or 3 since I became a black belt in nogi. So I'm going to work a bit more on my nogi, and then I might do like 50-50 split, or I don't know, 70-30. But my plan for now is to always keep doing, like, I really want to focus on gi. I have my goals. I want to win like worlds in gi, but I would like to do a bit more nogi on the side as well.
Yeah. Have you thought about the ADCC, the trials or anything?
Yeah, I have thought, but I'm not entirely sure if I would want to go that route, because it's like that kind of rule set where it's like you see a lot of people kind of bring it to overtime just to wrestle. It's just a lot about wrestling. All of a sudden, turtle is built around turtle. A lot of things that in my head makes no sense, and it's not the jiu-jitsu that I'm kind of like inspired by. So I'm not sure if I would want to start this whole endeavor of becoming a wrestler to try to win ADCC. I might just stay doing IBJJF, doing like Euros, doing Worlds. There can be super fights, stuff that would allow me to do the style and jiu-jitsu I really like.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And obviously, I've heard you talk about your opinions about steroids previously as well.
Yeah.
And obviously ADCC, I don't think they do any testing. Yeah. So there's obviously that to contend with as well. And we've talked previously about jiu-jitsu becoming mainstream and whether the sport needs to clean up to do that at any point. I mean, what are your thoughts on steroids?
I think it's super sad how it is now, how common it is, how it's like normalized, pushed, how you hear rumors about teenagers and kids being put on it. I think it's absurd. And I think it's very sad that it's getting so normalized. It's almost like, cool, just do it, whatever. It's not cool. It's not like no professional sport want to have an environment like that. Like, now I have a daughter. I'm going to soon have another one. I'm having a family. And I wouldn't want my kids to go into a sport and knowing if they wanted to become like great at it, that they might have to use steroids to be able to do that. It's so sad. You know what I mean? So I feel like we definitely need to have like we need to change our mindset about it and be less acceptant about it, try to have more testing and try to work against it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was a point that came up on a previous episode. I can't remember who we were talking to, but they made that exact point actually, that, you know, sort of the adults, like maybe doing it to compete's one thing, but actually if it's becoming more mainstream and your kids are watching it, I think that's a big consideration.
For sure.
Yeah.
But it's also cool to see, though, even if there are a lot of people using it, you see some of the people that are winning. A lot of because people say now everyone is using it, that seems to be the thing. And that's a very dangerous statement, because you might think that everyone is using. But like at CGI, at the 77, I would say the majorities of the guys in 77 was kind of preaching against it.
Yeah.
Obviously, they can be lying, but I think a lot of them were telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, these are like the best of the best in the toughest division that ever been, and they're preaching against it. So it definitely shows you can be like a top-level competitor, world-class, and you don't have to use it. And you saw like Rotolo winning ADCC, preaching about being clean. So it's so inspiring and cool to see that it's possible. Jiu-Jitsu is such a complex sport. It takes a lot of brains. You can work around. The whole idea of Jiu-Jitsu is like you can use technique to work against strength. You know what I mean? So it's so cool to see that that's like actually happening, and you don't have to do it.
Yeah, no, very true.
And I think a lot of those boys are definitely, well, in my opinion, are not juicing at under 77, you know, the Rotolos or even the Tackets or anyone like that. Because just even if you just look at their physique and how they are and whatever, you can tell they're not, like they might, if anything, they're just taking like some sort of like performance enhancer for like their cardio or something like that. But they're not taking like an anabolic steroid in which they're going to get a huge amount of muscle mass or a lot of strength gains. You can just see it. You know, like me and Paul are both coaches, and we've been in and around people who take steroids and bodybuilders and all that sort of stuff. And you can just tell. Like a lot of the time you can just tell, like physiologically you can tell when someone goes from like 75 kilos to 85 kilos in 3 months and they're looking jacked. It's quite an obvious thing. And there's other telltale signs as well, like their skin complexity and how they, you know, they look, and just generally you kind of look at them and you're like, you look a bit bloated. You know what I mean? You look a little bit bloated. And those types of things are like telltale signs. The bigger guys, you know, if you look at even like Gordon, Gordon was unbelievable at 90 kilos. You know, he was unbelievable, and he looked shredded. You know, I don't know if he was taking, you know, like again, something for his cardio or something then, but he was absolutely shredded. So he's gone up now though, and like, what was his biggest? He was huge.
He was huge.
Like 115 or something? Or
no, like 235 I think was his biggest.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's a huge amount of difference. So like the difference in what he's taken to like, you know, someone else is clear. It's clear. It's like those types of people you can't, but then like Nicky Rod, he's always been big. So like people calling and saying like Nicky's juicing, he doesn't have the signs of someone juicing. You know, he just looks after himself. When Jay come on the podcast, those boys look after themselves so well, mate. They don't drink alcohol. They don't do this. They don't do that. They live jiu-jitsu. They don't go out on the piss. They, you know, they're proper athletes. You know, and that's the difference, isn't it? That's the difference, and that's why like Nicky, he'll still be as good as he is in still another 5 years because he looks after himself, and Jay will get even better, you know?
100%.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, but I think it's tough while people are doing it to not, especially at the bigger weights, because I think going back to Gordon, I think whether he did or didn't in the early days, I think he ran into Penna, didn't he, and got, well, in his view, got out-strengthed. Penna was too strong, so then I think he probably went, you know, double down on the gear, because he was, you know, like, you know, Andre Gaval, probably on gear.
What do you mean, probably?
I'm trying to be like,
Jesus Christ,
diplomatic.
You look like a fucking Hulk when he fought Gordon at ADCC.
There's no chicken and egg though, isn't it? It's like who's doing it first, but who knows?
Yeah, no, it's funny though, isn't it? It's one of those, mate, where unless the top, like UFC come in and start offering contracts and start cleaning it up, and then, you know, that sort of thing.
That can happen,
Your ADCC could turn around and they go, you know, we're going to start testing, but I don't know. With Gordon at the top, I don't think they'll do it, because if they start testing, they're losing their main guy straight away. You know what I mean? Like how much money they'll probably lose by not having Gordon Ryan at ADCC. That's the truth of it, really, isn't it? Like I think if the top guy was like natural, I think it would be a lot easier to transition into just like drug testing and making sure everyone's like clean. Yeah,
but yeah, it's an interesting one, because you think, well, does that impact his like GOAT status because of the gear? But then if everybody's competed against is on gear, then
what's the Lance Armstrong argument, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know what was it? Lance Armstrong got all that stick and pop, but like wasn't like the next person not doing juice like on the 22nd or something like that when he won?
Yeah, I think the top 20 guys were all doing it.
So it's like if you took them all off juice, he would still be the best. You know what I mean? Like it's like a stupid argument, really, isn't it? You know. But again, how many of them are doing it and how many aren't, we don't know.
Yeah, it's so hard to say.
But I think this is the thing as well. Like, you know, you've got things like blood doping and like EPO, like what he was doing, and that you can't look at somebody and see that, you know. So who really knows?
Yeah, watch Icarus.
I started it. I didn't finish it.
But
I know
I didn't know about it. I just heard about it.
You got to go home and watch Icarus. It is the most fascinating thing, like ever, to do with like blood doping, all that sort of stuff.
It's wild.
It's crazy. It's the best documentary on steroids or steroid abuse by the Russian government I've ever seen. It's insane.
But this is the thing that I wonder, and they're not naming names, but you know, you look at the smaller guys. And yeah, they're not jacked and fucking just crushing people, but do they stop moving ever? No. You know, there's some extra like red blood cells in there somewhere, you know what I mean? So you wonder, who knows? But I guess, it's going to take a bigger organisation to clamp down on it, like the UFC did with MMA, where I've watched UFC for years, and I can almost remember when they brought in like USADA.
And Belfort.
And you suddenly just saw like, it was a lot of Brazilians, sadly, but a lot of top fighters either just turning shit, looking shit, both physically and otherwise, or suddenly getting injured all the time. So you'll probably see that, I think, at some point.
Well, I'd wipe out half of them on it. ADCC, if they bring in drug testing, what
it wouldn't be many left.
Well, the big boys especially.
Yeah, especially the bigger divisions.
They'd be gone, wouldn't they? It'd be funny. It'd actually be quite funny just to see like who's not there anymore.
Yeah, of all your travels and all the people that you train with, mate, who's been like the toughest the sort of some of the toughest people that you've kind of trained with, and some of the people that you look up to that you think maybe in or out of competition are like the best that we've got?
I think that it was obviously when I went to IBJJ, I got to roll with Guy and Hafa. They're amazing. But like for me, the toughest, I think like I've trained with Tommy for years. Like he's so good, you know. He's one of the toughest I ever trained with. And in many ways, I always looked up to the way Tommy is like approaching stuff. Like I remember in competitions and stuff, he always had like, he just really went for it. You know what I mean? He didn't try to play any strategy or anything. He went for the submission, and that was always inspiring to see. So I think honestly, it might be Tommy that's like the toughest.
Yeah, nice. And how about like some of the advice and guidance that you've had from people over the years when you've traveled, coaches or people you've met? Any kind of really good advice that's ever stood out to you?
Yeah, good advices. One that's always kind of that I will always remember was when I went to Arizona and I trained with Gustavo Dantes, and he just said to me, "Let your fear be your compass." That just stuck with me. I think that was such a cool statement. And it's like whenever there's fear or discomfort, like don't shy away, but let that guide you, go into it, you know what I mean? And I will always remember like that statement. So I think that's the one that stands out.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And I think you've got your own academy, Mavericks, right?
We didn't open up a new academy, but we created a team.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's basically me and John Thomas. I was a part of Kimura, he was a part of another team, and we just decided let's create something together. We can create a team where we can help, we can share our techniques, we can do like gatherings. So for example, in January we did like a Mavericks camp. We invited the affiliations, brought in some friends, trained together. So we just wanted to create like a team and a community that's of like-minded people in some sense, and it's a kind of our way also to help.
Yeah, and is that in Norway?
No, there's gyms in Canada, nice. UK, down in Europe, China. It's actually all over the place.
Cool. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that's
pretty wild.
And where did the name come from?
It was so hard to find a name, to be honest, because like every name was taken, right? So we're sitting forever talking about it, and I think it was John that kind of came upon that mentioned Mavericks. We talked about it. It's like, man, that's like a funny name with reference to the whole Top Gun and those things, but also like it has a deeper meaning that I truly resonates with, and to kind of think for yourself and all those things. So, and we just the more I was like Mavericks, man, it makes a lot of sense. So we just kind of went with that.
Yeah, and your style of coaching is that similar to how you've trained in the past, like being quite creative and quite free with what the guys are doing? Definitely
try. I really like when I can. Is one of the things I love to do when I'm teaching people is to roll with them and kind of like almost guide while rolling, and like just move your hand a bit here, like direct coaching. Obviously that's hard if you have a huge room, but if I can, it's like just give small details while rolling, and those small details is directly for what they need in that situation, and then I feel it helps almost like more, instead of being more like coaching more objectively, if that makes sense.
Yeah, nice. And I was looking online at some of the videos that you've done, and obviously you've got a fairly decent Instagram following.
Yeah.
You've not got a bad YouTube following, but it doesn't look like you've posted anything on there for a while. How come you stopped with that?
I did a lot of my YouTube when I was injured.
Okay.
Because I had so much energy, so I just had to do something, you know what I mean? But actually, it's funny that you say, because I'm going to dive into YouTube a lot. Like I'm going to start with my YouTube properly now. So it really helps to have John, because he has a huge following on YouTube. He's been doing it for years. So he can help give some advices, and I want to really go into like creating way more content for YouTube as well. Because now I've been like, feel I have kind of like Instagram a bit figured out. I have my way of posting, my style. Now I want to do the same on YouTube.
Yeah, nice. What sort of stuff are you thinking already that you're going to be putting on YouTube?
I want to do technique. Might do some, if we did do like a camp or do some stuff out of that. I want to film with others when I'm traveling. So stuff like that. I would also like to, for example, do like rolling commentary, roll with people, and then kind of share my thoughts on the roll, what I can have done differently, what I can have done differently, what's good or not, those things. Just, but I would say like the main idea is just technical. The technical side of Jiu-Jitsu would be like the core of my channel.
Yeah, nice. No, the content on there is already really good, so I look forward to anything else you create, mate.
Yeah.
So that'd be good. Tell us about anything else that you've got coming up, mate. Any other seminars, any travels, any comps, or anything you got going on?
Now I'm just gonna finish off the tour. Here I'm having seminars this week in UK. I'm gonna go also on Monday to Grimsby. So then I have done like basically 10 seminars here in UK. Been all over the place, up in Scotland, now down here in Plymouth, all over. And then I'm going to go to France, do some seminars in some weeks. And then I want to compete as much as I can before Worlds, because Worlds going to be like at the beginning of June. So that's like my main goal now, is like the World Championship. So I'll try to compete as much as I can before that.
Yeah, nice. Cool. Anything else you want to cover off, mate?
No, it's good.
Anything else you want to talk about, buddy?
That's good.
All right, Espen. Pleasure, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, Espen.
Thanks.
Thank you, mate.
Awesome.